Known for his organ and harpsichord music, the composer of the famous canon from Canon and Gigue in D for three violins and continuo. Johann Pachelbel, born 1653 and died 1706, was a German organist and composer, mainly of organ works, though he has written for other keyboard instruments such as the clavichord and the harpsichord. He also wrote a lot of chamber ensembles and various vocal media. His liturgical organ music was composed for the Lutheran ritual. His fugues are the utmost importance not only because of their influence on Bach's writing in this form, but for their intrinsic artistic value. Pachelbel was born and died in Nuremberg, Germany. His parents enrolled him in St. Lawrence High School and received his early musical training from two leading local instructors, Heinrich Schweber, who taught him the rudiments of music, and George Caspar Wecker, who taught him composition and instrumental performance. To enhance his general education, he attended the Auditorium Acadianum, where sons of the city's cultured families listened to learn lectures. On June 29, 1669, he entered the university at Altdorf, where he also served as organist of the Lohenkirche. Because his father could not afford to support him, he was forced to leave the university after less than a year. Probably in the spring of 1670, he enrolled in the Gymnasium Poetica at Regensburg, where his exceptional academic qualifications were rewarded with a special scholarship over and above the school's normal quota. He was also permitted to study music outside the gymnasium under Caspar Fried, a protege of Johann Caspar Carol. It was probably under Fried that he studied the music of leading Italian composers. We've mentioned before he served as the organist at Lohenkirche. The years 1672 to 1676 has less documentation on Pachelbel. It is unknown if he left Regensburg when his teachers left, or maybe he left earlier or later than that. Most of my sources don't mention these years. However, on May 4, 1677, he became court organist at Eisenach, under the Kapellmeister Daniel Eberlin, in the employ of Prince Johann George, Duke of Saxe-Eisenach. After about a year, though Pachelbel had no offer of employment elsewhere, he requested and received from Eberlin a gracious testimonial in which Eberlin described him as a perfect and rare virtuoso. He then left Eisenach on May 18, 1670. Pachelbel found almost immediate re-employment as organist of the Protestant Predigerkirche at Erfurt. His contract dated June 19, 1678, just a month later, clearly prescribing, among other details, the organist's role. He was to precede the singing of a chorale by the congregation with a thematic prelude based on its melody, and he was to accompany the singing throughout all the stanzas. In a further attempt to rein in any tendency of the unpredictable behavior of part of the organist, Pachelbel's contract makes it clear that he was not to improvise the prelude, but should diligently prepare it beforehand. It was also specified that every year on St. John the Baptist's Day, June 24th, he was to observe the anniversary of this employment by submitting to a re-examination and by demonstrating his vocational progress during the past year in a half-hour recital at the end of the afternoon service, using the entire resources of the organ in a delightful and euphonious harmony. Pachelbel was an outstandingly successful organist, composer, and teacher at Erfurt, but he eventually asked for permission to leave and was formally released on August 15, 1690 after 12 years of service. From September 1st, he was a musician and organist at the Württemberg court at Stuttgart, under the patronage of Duchess Magdalena Sybilla. His new position was in many respects an improvement for him, but in the autumn of 1692, he was forced to flee before a French Revolution. He went to Nuremberg, but within a few weeks returned to Thuringia, where on the 8th of November he became a town organist at Gotha. According to Madison, he was invited on December 2nd 1692 by a distinguished gentleman to fill an organist post at Oxford, but declined the offer. He also refused a request to return to Stuttgart. Following the death of George Caspar Becker, organist of St. Sabaldus Church on April 20, 1695, at Melviora, the authorities appeared anxious to appoint Pachelbel as her next organist. A celebrated native of the city, for contrary to the usual practice, the position at St. Sabaldus, the most important of the youngest kind in Nuremberg, was not filled by examination, nor were the organists of the city's lesser churches invited to apply. After Pachelbel had officially received an invitation from St. Sabaldus, he addressed a gracious letter to the authorities at Gotha, asking them to release him. He presumably arrived at Nuremberg during the summer, for on July 26, 1695, the city council ordered that he be paid 30 gulden towards his traveling expenses. He remained at St. Sabaldus until his death 11 years later. In 1681, Pachelbel got married to Barbara Gabler, but she and his infant child died in a plague that struck his town in 1683. Soon after the death of his wife and child, Pachelbel composed a series of chorales titled Musical Thoughts of Death. On August 24, 1684, he married Judith Zroma, who bore him 5 sons and 2 daughters. During his years in Thuringia at Eisenach and Erfurt, he was naturally drawn to the Bach family. Ambrosius, Johann Sebastian Bach's father, asked him to act as a godfather to his daughter, Johanna Juditha, and to teach music to his son, Johann Christoph, later known as Oldroth Bach, and the teacher of Johann Sebastian Bach. As at Erfurt, he was soon surrounded by many pupils who eventually assumed positions of importance, and 3 of his 4 children followed him into musical career. Wilhelm Hieronymus Pachelbel, born 1686 and died 1764. Much of his father's most promising pupils became organists at the Sabaldustkirche and a composer of people's music. Karl Theodor Pachelbel, born 1690 and died 1750, is also an organist and composer. He emigrated to North America when he was about 40 years old and worked on the East Coast in cities like Boston, Newport, New York, and Charleston. Johann Michael Pachelbel, born 1692, was an instrument maker. Though some of my sources say he has 6 sons and 2 daughters, other sources say he has 4 sons and 1 daughter. 3 sons were mentioned and recorded. His eldest daughter is also recorded. His eldest daughter, Amelia Pachelbel, is known as the first author of moon pattern and is one of the important mathematicians and artists at Nuremberg. She is also a magnificent painter and engraver. Her art was said to please her father. Pachelbel's music was extremely well known during his lifetime. His compositions were overly ornamented and often embellished. Pachelbel's organ playing skills were said to be unrivaled, and he is credited with helping to institute the tradition of German organ music. However, as the Baroque era evolved, it consequently came to an end. Pachelbel faded into history. Fortunately, his music was revived and rediscovered by musicologists in the early 20th century. Although he is often categorized as a one-hit wonder of the Baroque era, the German composer and organist is also responsible for helping to introduce the South German organ music style into Central and North Germany. Pachelbel created over 500 pieces of scores of his life, which is a huge achievement for any composer. Though a lot of his chamber works did not survive, he still have a lot of works anyone can access and listen to online. I will be excluding his Canon and Gigue for 3 violins and basso continuo, as a lot of his works, which I'd argue are better than the Canon. My first recommendation is the Hexachordum Apollonie, 6 sets of arias and variations for keyboards. My second recommendation is the Musical Delights, a collection of 6 suites for 2 violins and basso continuo. and my final recommendation is the Prelude and Fugue in D minor for organ. All the sources to this information can be found below along with the links to the music playing in the background, which are the recommendations.